It is almost 5 years to the month since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and yet there are still arguments about the origin of the virus. Can you believe that? Some changes have come up in the news just recently that you may not have been aware of, and I think it's important to keep you updated so that you can understand what the arguments are. At present, nobody can conclusively say what it is, but you should be informed about what the thinking is. One, because the implications of gain of function with lab leak of a virus or even intentional leak or spreading of a virus causing harm to the population is of direct relevance to you and to your health. Think of how many friends, families, businesses, countries that have been damaged by this, and to think that this could happen again simply because we didn't ask enough questions at this time. Unacceptable. We have a responsibility to ask the hard questions. Before I get into this, just a reminder that coming up, are you prepared against disease X? This is how we have taken the whole COVID scenario and we have made it into an educational scientific story for you to understand the pandemic. Join us. We're going to be launching soon. You can even get a free download preview of Disease X right here. So we appreciate all the support that we had on Kickstarter because in effect, because of their support, we were able to get this thing done. So join us in the journey as we continue to explore the science. Let's get back to what is really happening. Where did this conversation come from? And you have to note the date today. Today is the 8th of December, just in case you're watching this in the future. And what was in the news just recently is on the 6th of December. So this is just 2 days ago, published in Nature, one of the top journals, scientific journals. Wuhan lab samples hold no close relatives to virus behind COVID-19. She Zengili, this is the virologist, they called her the Bat Lady, at the center of the COVID lab leak theory, reveals coronavirus sequences from the Wuhan Institute. And this is a picture, probably from the past, of her working in the lab in obviously a level 3 or 4 lab with the full kit on. Now, here is the point that the first thought that I had was, why now? Why is she talking about this 5 years after if she had all this information at the origin? She could have just told us. Why did we have to go through 5 years of questioning to try and understand what was going on? So let's go back to the article and see exactly what was happening here. So, after years of rumors that the virus had escaped from a lab, at a conference in Japan this week, Shi Zengili, a specialist on bat coronaviruses, reported that none of the viruses stored in her freezers are among the most recent ancestors of SARS-CoV-2. And so that's in effect what she's saying now, that none of it was from SARS-CoV-2. I think I just need to make the screen a little bigger so that you can read the writing as well. So if you just bear with me a second. Not much bigger. But the point is that this was at a conference in Japan. And she was talking about looking at all of her genomic sequences in order to make sense of what had happened. And you can see the latest analysis here has not been peer reviewed yet, but it includes data from the whole genomes of 56 new beta coronaviruses, the broad group to which SARS-CoV-2 belongs, as well as some of the partial sequences. These are viruses all collected between 2004 and 2021. Now, what they're saying there is that when they looked at all of these viruses, they haven't found any of them that she was working on in a lab that matches SARS-CoV-2. But we have a problem because we can't find a match either in the natural world. It's just not there. There is no other animal that seems to have it. So it seems this virus just randomly mutated out of nothing, infected the whole world, disappeared, and we have no idea. I usually think of this from a political point of view, or not a political, but an investigative point of view. The characteristics of the virus are like a fingerprint. The fingerprint is on the knife. The person has been found with a knife wound. They are dead. There is some benefit that is connected with the death of this person. Yet the person's fingerprint who is on the knife says it has nothing to do with them. It's that kind of scenario. And if the police said, oh, that's fine, that would make no sense. That's not good investigative work. So, what you have to then question is why is this coming out now? What happened in the past few days that would change this? Then this is where the politics comes in. So here we have on the 4th of December, 2 days before that Nature magazine publication, the Select Subcommittee of the Coronavirus Pandemic. This is a Republican pathway select committee after review of the COVID-19 pandemic, the lessons learned and the path forward. And you can search this on the internet. It passed through Congress, and this was the select subcommittee. They were investigating this, asking questions over the past few years, and they have finally put out their statement on the 4th of December. So for that Nature article to have been published on the 6th of December, it suggested that they knew that this was coming, and this was their way of countering that. Because remarkably, the day after that was published, the Democrats also published their own paper, which was counter to that. So this is all politics. None of this is science. The science is hidden because everybody is protecting their back. And this seems to be what is driving everything. Nobody, it seems, in that political world is interested in really trying to understand what's happening and trying to get to the bottom of it. A lot of it is politics. It doesn't interest me in terms of the politics, but the science is extremely important. But let's look at what the Republican side found with regards to the work that they were doing looking at this gain of function research. And here you have, this is the information that was done. And I'll highlight just a few things. So in January of 2024, Mr. Wade voiced his increasing support for lab incident origin. And one of the things he's pointed out, and this is a point I keep on asking people, is that the SARS-CoV-2 virus possesses a furin cleavage site found in none of the other 871 known members of its viral family. This furin cleavage site is not present on any other human coronavirus. So, what we are saying, let me just make it clear, the people who are against the lab leak origin, what they're saying is that this coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, naturally evolved in the wild. Somehow it acquired a furin cleavage site that made it far more infective, and this virus disappeared in the wild, but it spread in humans. That's effectively what they're saying. No, that is possible. But based on the research of the people who found the furin cleavage site, because remember, this was found by people just happening to do the research. I interviewed the professor who found it, and what he said is that when you actually look at the chances of this occurring, it's like 1 trillion to 1. Now, maybe you had a lottery ticket, and so you can think, yep, that can happen. But I'm a little bit more skeptical about that. So let's go on in terms of not just the furin cleavage side, but what else did they find in this report that could be quite important? So he explained, Dr. Chan then explained five key points that support the lab leak scenario. The first, he said, is that it occurred in Wuhan, the city where they were studying SARS-like viruses, where Zengili was working. Dr. Shi had been researching SARS-like viruses for over a decade. Now, remember that Dr. Shi is also the person who is saying that none of the viruses that they had collected in the wild looks like SARS-CoV-2. That to me suggests even more that maybe it was gain of function. But anyway, that's just my opinion here. This is for you to reflect on yourself. Then they said, next, he said, in 2018, the year before the outbreak, EcoHealth, in partnership with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, that's WIV, applied for a grant to create a SARS-CoV-2 virus. They applied for it in 2018, and then coincidentally, in 2019, a virus like what they were proposing leaks from the same or is in the vicinity of the same lab. And I mean, yeah, that's possible. It could be completely random. So yeah, we accept that, I think. Next, you have the third point he made is that the Wuhan Institute of Virology had a track record of engaging in this type of airborne viral research under low biosafety conditions. So they knew that there were issues in that lab that could cause issues about potential leaks. That's a third reason. What else in the terms of what they said that could be relevant? The fourth point that he said was that if it came from an animal in the seafood market in Wuhan, he says the points that the existing genetic and early case data show that all known COVID cases probably stem from a single introduction of SARS-CoV-2 into people at the outbreak. And the outbreak of the Wuhan market probably happened after the virus had already been circulating. Furthermore, no infected animal has been verified at the Wuhan market or its supply chains. This is a really, really important point because to me, this has always been the issue. Let's just think about it. I mean, this is just an exercise in thought at the moment because none of us have access to all of the science. So, my thought is very simple. If you had a bat or some other animal that had the virus, it was found in the wild, it was then captured by someone. He would then have packaged it together, taken it home with other things, planned to go to the market. Maybe he had a car, maybe he had to take a bus from this remote area. He then travels into the city. He's in contact with multiple people to get to the wet market. He then sells this infected animal in the wet market, and suddenly it starts spreading there. Why didn't it spread all the way through? You should have a trail of people who were infected from the point that you got the animal in the remote all the way into the wet market. Am I thinking too much here? I don't know. I'm just saying. Anyway, moving on. And the final key evidence, as he said, is that if the virus had emerged from the wildlife trail, it is still missing. In previous outbreaks, as SARS in 2002 and MERS in 2012, infected animals were found. The earliest cases occurred in people exposed to live animals, and ancestral variants of the virus found in animals were discovered. They haven't had any of that trail with this SARS-CoV-2 virus with COVID-19. So I'm just a simple person. To me, unless you find that trail, it's not good enough to say that I haven't seen this evidence here in the lab because the information was destroyed in September, I think, of 2019. It was all taken away. So we don't know. It's never been properly investigated. And the issue is the thing that you have to really think about is why in the world are Western scientists protecting this? I thought that they were having an issue with China. This would have been a perfect reason to hammer China about something. But I think they know that in reality, it's not actually China, even though it was done in China, the funding came from outside, and the people involved knew from outside. And so, therefore, they are protecting their own interests. That's what it seems like to me, because otherwise, it literally makes no sense that they wouldn't want or we wouldn't be saying, show us the proof that it is not from the lab. I really genuinely can't understand anyone who is defending that position. Yeah, I just don't understand why. Unless you have a vested interest in it, why would you defend that position? Makes no sense to me. But I have no vested interest in it. I am just concerned at the end of the day that the reason why a lab made origin is so important from a clinical perspective is that there are some characteristics here of this virus that we don't normally see. One, it triggers autoimmune responses with the spike protein like we have never seen before. I'll not argue about the spike protein sources now. We'll just stick with the virus for the minute. Two, it also has the capability of infecting lymphocytes and destroying lymphocytes, making them dysfunctional. This is part of the reason why early in the pandemic, so many patients had lymphopenia. The lymphocyte counts were low. And even now, with ongoing infection, it's taking out specific lymphocytes, therefore, technically weakening the population immunity. That's why we're having so many diseases circulating around. Three, it has the capacity to interfere with the microbiome. Specific bacteria are almost completely removed, and that's not good. And that will then drive other diseases. This is still circulating at a high level after 5 years. This is not endemic spread, this is just high circulation. These are all really important clinical points. My concern is that forget the politics a minute, but if the clinicians aren't treating this as something unusual, it will mean they don't try and become innovative in how to neutralize and mitigate the damage. That's where I think the population is really at risk. And that's why the lab leak question, to me, from a clinical point of view, is very important to be acknowledged. We need to presume this is pretty dangerous and that every circulation of the virus is doing serious damage. And our challenge is how we can find ways to mitigate it. As I said before, that's the purpose of what I've been doing. Are you prepared against disease X? Everything here is modeled on COVID 19 because I suspect we are never going to find a virus that is as effective as this one that ever comes from the wild. Therefore, if you understand this virus in a nice storybook format, you are likely to be much better prepared for the future. That's the point that I'm making. We all need to start thinking because the people who should be thinking on our behalf are clearly conflicted. Somebody needs to protect us. Have a great evening. Look forward to sharing more information with you.